На английском. А у нас, по-моему, не осталось чем договориться. Окей.
So, dear colleagues, I will continue in English, though, in case I can double text in Russian, but my presentation is in Russian. So, throughout my work on intentional blindness that I was doing, I thought that I'm investigating two types of stimuli, either gorillas or crosses. So, and here you see the stimuli from the seminal works on intentional blindness, some of them from Arian Mack here. Sorry. Some of them from Arian Max, some of them from Steve Moss, some of them from Jeremy Wolfe, and some of them from Dan Simons. So all of them have been investigating those two types of things. So, but the intentional blindness is actually, though quite interesting and very familiar to every one of you, is quite important for investigating the problem of consciousness, awareness, let's say. And recently there has been so many works on the different theories of consciousness and so many approaches. My aim is not to just list all of them, but I'm trying to say that regarding intentional blindness and regarding the problem of not noticing something quite salient while our attention is engaged in the other task, is like three different things, three different approaches. And one states that our awareness or partial consciousness can exist without attention. And these are works mainly by Christoph Koch and Tsuchiya and their group. I'm not enumerating all the works here, but some of them. And on the opposite, there is an approach of Stanislas Dan and his group that says that, well, actually we're not able to be aware of something without attention. And there is a neural model of intentional blindness existing right now that says that intentional blindness happens to the to the ignition, as he says, that states that ignition of the thalamocortical columns that provide the immediate firing of set of neurons to process the information in a winner-take-it-all manner. But while doing this, we become kind of unable to process any more information that is possibly quite close and quite in the same domain and in the same task, in the same visual field. So this is kind of when attention is directed to something and the ignition starts and the whole system's work is working, then due to this whole process of work, we are unable to process something else. So, and the third approach says that, well, yeah, we actually can be aware of something that we are not attending to, but this awareness is very, very low level, and we probably can't report on this. So, actually, these are all things that I'm sure are familiar to you, and I don't need to talk about this anymore. So, what I was interested in is what was going on in brain during intentional blindness. And actually, this is the thing that wasn't investigated that much. I know 3 fMRI studies of intentional blindness, and only one of them actually addressed the intentional blindness question directly in the scanner. 2 of them were like not even measuring this effect. And I know only one ERP study of intentional blindness. And this is one that is shown here. It's the Pitts, Martinez, and Hilliard paper where they tried actually to copy the original Mack and Rock study where the people were doing the task of differentiating colors of the circles here, but at the same time in the center there was a pattern of random patches that sometimes became a figure, like a shape, formed a shape. And they were measuring earpiece throughout the whole procedure. And after that, they asked participants whether they noticed that sometimes random dots formed. I don't know whether you can see it actually, but here is a diamond shape. Here is a square shape, and here is nothing. Right? Yeah. So, but I'm sure that right now you're showing not intentional blindness, but you're showing just the mere inability to notice something that is below your threshold of detection. Yeah. So actually, these things are really there, believe me. So after the whole set of trials, subjects were asked whether they have noticed anything other than their main task, these round circles. And when they said yes, they noticed, they were if they said that they noticed, they were divided into two parts, and those groups were compared with each other. And what they have found is that, so yeah, there was a difference in the time window, 200 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds, in detection, in distinguishing between patterns and random arrays. And there was also a difference in 300 milliseconds, 340 milliseconds time window, also between those shapes and random arrays, but only in those people who noticed that something was going on. So if to convert it into something interpretable, we can say that in an early time slot, like when subjects just noticed, just saw something, we can say that they were distinguishing definitely between something that is presented that has some kind of meaning, they was grouped, so the kind of early perceptual grouping, and totally random things, and that was independent of whether they were intentionally blind or not. But later, at some stage that is claimed to be conscious stage, usually in ERP studies, because from 300 milliseconds we think that some kind of that this period kind of marks some kind of conscious processes starting. Yes, we can say that this distinction happens, but only in those who are aware, so they can kind of distinguish it even more. They understand that this is the diamond shape, this is not anything like that, yes, this is the square shape, yes, so it's kind of two different stages. One of understanding that there is something, yes, if to come back to the previous talk, yes, if we can compare between MIT and MOT, yes, so this is some stage that understands there is something, and the other stage that understands, oh, that's what it is, so the identity of the objects, exactly. So, the problem of Pitts and Hilliard task, though extremely nice and really comparable to the original Mark and Rock studies, is that they have asked their subjects whether they have noticed or not only after the whole set. So actually, can you imagine, like, you were sitting there like for an hour or so, and only after an hour you're asked, have you noticed anything? Of course you have noticed. Well, whether you remember about this or not, maybe not. So that's why it was important for me all the time to think about the paradigms that address the issue of the question whether you notice something directly. And to my great light, I have found the work of Mika Klavist and colleagues that actually are doing this. They're trying to investigate attention and awareness components right in the quite simple paradigm, and I was trying to use this paradigm. So the original works, there are several works, they are dealing with the task. It is very simple, which is the task. I'm sorry that I'm repeating something for someone who might know, but once again. So there are two tasks. One of them is the target, and two letters. One of them is the target, the other is distractor. One is non-target. Your task is just to look at the side that is queued. There is a queue every other block of trials, and respond whether you noticed a target. So just press the key when you notice it. So that's the original task of make a quest. So, and the target and non-target could be masked. And if they're masked like this, actually investigators made sure that in this mask, both target and non-target became quite invisible. It was like their perception was nearly above threshold or below threshold. With these masks, they've got 5% of correct recognitions of the target. So which means that this is a good masking. So we can say that people did not notice the identity of the target. Yeah. And if the target is masked like this, so they have around like 90% of correct recognition of it. And they say that, yes, of course, it's the target. So in this case, we can compare this mask and unmasked condition and see whether they are different, the ERPs are different. And that's how in their work they have found a visual awareness negativity correlate, which is an early one, starts from 100 milliseconds after single sunset and continues about like 200 milliseconds and 250. But also because we're queuing targets and non-targets, so we're changing, yes, every other time the attended visual field, we can compare these two things, and thus we're comparing attended location to the unattended. And in this case, they have obtained a selective negativity component, which, of course, well, probably not of course, but which happened to be later. It starts from 200 milliseconds and goes up to 300 milliseconds, and is visible like in all contralateral electrodes that are comparing attended to non-attended position. So the difference in our task was that first we thought why we cannot measure the answer to the question no. Yes. In Professor Kravis's task, the question was only to press the key when you see the target. So the answer is only yes, yes. But if I'm interested in intentional blindness, my major concern is answer no, yes, whether the target was somewhere, but I answered no. So first we included the second answer, yes, the second key. So there was a binary choice now, and subject had to press either no or yes key every trial, yes. So every other trial they present with two letters, either masked or unmasked, and they are asked to press either yes or no key whether they notice or not notice the target. But if you're given two keys, then the question of attention comes to the stage, because how then you would be sure that subjects really paid attention to the scene? They would say, for example, randomly say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Like, okay, this is the answer, yes, and it's a correct answer because it was some kind of strategy chosen. So we made it sure that they paid attention by dividing the procedure into two blocks, and one contained the forced instruction when subjects. The aim of this instruction was to make the item in the attended field more relevant and to make them pay more attention to the attended field. So this first instruction was to answer to the target only then when they saw it in the attended field. That's the thing. And we also increased the distribution of targets and non-targets in this condition. So making 3-to-1 targets to non-targets, which means that in the attended field there were thrice as more targets than in unattended field. And we also made sure that they were able to to respond to the unattended field with the second block of the experiment, where we enhance the relevancy of the target in the unattended field by first giving the free instruction. So free instruction is the report the target every time you see it. Just doesn't matter whether it's an unattended field or attended field. Yes, okay, there's a cue of the where you can pay attention to, but anyways, if you notice for some reason the target in the unattended field, please respond. That's the free instruction. And also the distribution of targets and distractors, non-targets, was equivalent. So actually they got used that the target was in the unattended field half of the trials. So this is the possible way, like that's, we did it just because we wanted to make sure that in one situation the attention is directed to the attended field, and then the other attention possibly could be directed to the unattended field. So the main results, and of course so the overall, I'm sorry I have forgotten to say, so there were 17 subjects, and there was like around 1 hour and a half experiment. So we were conducting it in the Department of Biology here in University, St. Petersburg University. And of course we measured, first tried to measure those components that were originally found in Kovista's experiment. And yes, we did find them. So visual awareness negativity, I will show to you. So this is like one of the electrodes, just to show you. Visual awareness negativity is more negative response to unmasked target in comparison with masked. So it means that if the target is unmasked, it's kind of clear that we see it, yes, and we are visually aware of it. And we start to differentiate the response to unmasked stimuli in comparison with masked stimuli starting from 200 milliseconds, quite early. So that's what we found. And the other thing is selective negativity is more negative response to targets in comparison with non-targets. In the field, like a little bit later than, actually this is the not very probably characteristic electrode, but selective negativity comes to, like, it starts to be very visible like a little bit after 220 and 50 milliseconds, but 200 here. So we differentiate targets from non-targets, yes, so we understand, and that's important, this is non-spatial attention, yes, correlate. It's not about target is to the right or to the left, yes. It's about, I understand that this letter is target and not distractor. Because it's pooled data over two fields and it's contralateral electrodes. So the main result is that yes, we could replicate results of Andrei Vonso, Mika Klovista and colleagues with slightly different modification of the paradigm, which was very important by itself because we did not know whether visual awareness negativity is possible still when we include the answer no, when we try to modify attention, something like that. Yes? So at least we find the same thing. So visual awareness negativity and selective negativity seem to be quite robust, in fact independent of the slight modification of the procedure. That's it. Second, because we had two different instructions, we thought that might be instruction is the key to see whether there's like any differences in tasks, yeah. And we compared two blocks, as I told, there were two blocks in the task, and we see that instruction actually starts to matter, but it starts to matter only after 200 milliseconds. So in the attended field, you see this kind of small bump of the forced instruction, so there were more negative answers to when they were in the condition of forced instruction, asked to respond only to the target in the intended field. And in the unintended field, there is also kind of more negative, overall more negative response to the forced instruction and more kind of, well, it's not a comparable thing, yeah, because I cannot compare more positive and more negative, but there is a difference between forced and free instruction, both in attended and unattended field. But only starting from 200, and like if we consider this, for example, electrode that starts like even after more like 300, so it continues on going. But the idea, the whole idea of the experiment was to measure intentional blindness condition. Yes? So everything that we started and everything that we did was only just to understand whether it's possible to find something that is equivalent to intentional blindness and study ERP. So that's what we thought is intentional blindness in this experiment. And I'm sure that is not what intentional blindness in different experiments. So this is kind of the operationalization, sorry, of the term. So we considered intentional blindness condition in the case when subject was looking for example, to the left. Yes, so the cue was to the left, but subject was looking to the non-target. Yeah. And the target was in the unattended field, and the subject responded that he or she did not see the target. So when your attention is redirected, the target is somewhere here, and you say, no, I don't see the target. This is the condition that we thought is equivalent to intentional blindness. Could be not, once again, yeah, but because we didn't vary the cognitive load or other different factors that might influence intentional blindness, here we thought that it could be. So we were interested in two predictions. Intentional blindness is a lack of awareness or is a lack of attention? Well, the question that is interesting to everyone who's investigating intentional blindness, yeah? What is it? What's the reason? And if the unseen object is a kind of masked object to our perceptual system, yeah? So then we might notice some kind of equivalent of visual awareness negativity when we compare those answers do not see, yes, do not notice the target with the answers notice the target. Because in this case we might think that maybe this unseen object is actually like kind of masked object, yeah. This is first prediction, and the second prediction, if unseen object, if the matter is not in whether it's masked or not, yes, visually or not, but if the unseen object is actually is perceived as a target or maybe non-target. So whether we differentiate that, I don't know, gorilla, yes, that appears in our visual field is a kind of target or not. So if we think that it's still a target, that we might consider finding selective negativity or equivalent of selective negativity component in the same condition, comparing answers do not notice between targets and non-targets. I'm not sure whether it's obvious, but once again, so if we think that intentional blindness is a reaction, is just a reaction because the stimulus is masked, it's like, I don't know, somewhere beyond our acute vision and we don't care about it, just beyond the threshold, then we might find equivalent of visual awareness negativity component when we compare these intentional blindness answers to the answers I see, yes, to the answers, to the answers of conscious report, yeah. But if we, this is like one thing, but if we think that the question is not in the awareness of the thing, of the target, but the question is of I don't know, attention modulation or something else, so we might notice, we might see some kind of differentiation between target and non-target within the subset of answers do not notice. So that's the result of the first prediction. If we compare answers C, this is like dashed line, and do not see, yes, noticed and do not notice, in the unattended field, yes, so it's the intentional blindness condition. So it's not like overall, it's like only this intentional blindness condition when you're looking somewhere else, you're attending somewhere else, and there is a target in the unattended field, and you said, I didn't notice that. So we have this difference after 300 milliseconds, and it's like kind of a bump, which is well-known thing that is called late LP, yes, positive wave that marks some kind of conscious processing. It's like more of a metaphor. I'm not really saying that it's a conscious processing, but that might be the correlate. And so we see that before this 300 milliseconds, there is some difference, of course, between answers I noticed and I didn't notice, but this is not statistically different. And it's not only on this electrode, it's like across all electrodes. So we might understand that probably they did not differentiate much between the targets if they answered don't see and see. Okay, so probably the brain is processing the targets equivalently without noticing what kind of verbal answer the subject gives. But what about differentiating, the real differentiation between targets and non-targets? So here you see the difference between targets and non-targets. Targets are dashed. When subject answer do not notice. So if you say I do not notice, I didn't see any target, but there is a target, your brain actually responds in a kind of N2PC version of the component. So differentiating definitely, or selected negative component is like could be both. Clearly understanding that what you see, what you responded as do not notice was a target in comparison with non-target. So once again, the overall results. We can obtain visual awareness negativity and selective negativity as components of originally discovered in works of Andrei Boltz, Omega Kovist, and others in a slightly modified procedure. That's first. Second, distribution of attention and differences in instructions that modulate attention start to influence the task, but starting from 200 milliseconds of the stimulus onset and later, and most of them start to influence later. So it's like kind of, well, it's all an obvious result, but once again, it was worth having it. And the answer, I don't notice, I did not see the target, actually is accompanied with the differentiation of target and non-target. So if we said, I did notice gorilla, it doesn't mean that you did not differentiate this gorilla from the background. That's what I mean, yes. And the answer, I didn't notice, in the unattended field probably is not correlated with the overall complexity, yes, of the perception of the target, because we don't see any clear difference between answers I see and I don't see. So it's actually somehow kind of on periphery, not on periphery, but like on periphery of attention, yes, not your vision, on periphery of your attention, something happens and you notice that it might be a target, but your brain processes this stimuli same way as the target that you will later report as the target that you've noticed. So sorry, that's and if we come to the overall conclusion, here one of the theories presented, and this is a well-known theory of Stanislas Dehaene and his differentiation between different conscious states. And if we come back to the intentional blindness research and say, okay, what about processing gorillas? Yeah, I would say that there is like a continuum in this task, and there might be tasks, there might be stimuli that are just on the periphery of our attention, that are not above the threshold, and the attention does not help to bring them to awareness. And these are kind of crosses, yes. So when you say no to cross, you're in this situation where it's like unattended and more or less subliminal target. And in this case, there is kind of, I don't see, I don't notice, and that goes away. But there's also a situation when you say no to gorilla, and when there is like a pre-conscious stage where the salient item, more or less the salient item, sufficiently strong, but in the unattended field, helps your brain to differentiate between gorilla and non-gorilla, but still you report that you didn't see that. So, I mean, the overall results of this European study try to claim that maybe when you say no to gorilla, you're close to the situation when you are not able to report the gorilla, but you still see the gorilla. Thank you.
Вопросы?
My question is about this selective negativity. In your result, you've shown that when people unsee target or non-target that is masked, they still differentiate between them according to this component, right? So, I mean, one of your latest results. Yeah. So.
Okay. I just don't understand the question. Okay.
Well, when we hear the word selective, of course, it is intuitively associated with attention.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of we say that this is somehow intentional.
Okay, got your answer.
Selective negativity, but how can be intentional without awareness? Да, конечно. Соответственно, вопрос был о том, что если есть вот этот компонент селективной негативности при неосознании, собственно говоря, буквы замаскированной, то можно ли говорить о том, что это селективная негативность, поскольку селективно связано с вниманием, можно ли говорить, что это все-таки относится к вниманию или что?
So, if I understood the question correct, you're saying that there
I'm
is
not sure
no...
that I understand it correctly.
As far as I understood it, you say that we cannot claim that there is no attention in the unattended field in this task. Am I right?
Not exactly. Well, my question was whether we can call this attention, according to this difference between those selected negativities, or this reflects just some kind of unconscious discrimination.
Okay, all the questions about the name of the component should be addressed to Professor Kovistar. Because that's his work and that's his discovery. I would say that this is attention because this is the result of comparison between attended and in the unattended field, for example, between targets and non-targets. So selective negativity is the difference between reaction to targets and non-targets. Right. So if you interpret it like interpret, this is like object-oriented attention, or feature-oriented attention. So it's not like space-based attention. Yeah.
But well,
it's like
feature differentiation can be without attention.
Yeah.
Do I understand the question correctly that Igor asked why do you want to call it attention?
Okay,
it's
so
a definition question.
Roughly.
That's a good question.
Let's ban this sort of questions.
I would say that it's not even, if it's a feature thing, maybe, but does the feature-based attention allow us to really understand what's the difference between target and non-target immediately, very, very fast? Is it possible? Because I was thinking all the time that the real difference between target and non-target is more of a kind of more of attentive and more of a later process, conscious process. When I start to think about the relevance of the item, because the relevance to the task and everything. But overall, yes, in a question, what is the first, attention or consciousness? Yes, because these two things you can just switch between each other. It's a question. Я переведу ответ. Собственно, если говорить о том, что, если говорить о проблеме того, что почему этот компонент вызванных потенциалов в принципе отражает внимание. Ну, я сначала адресовалась к изначальной работе, повесть о том, что там это названо селективной негативностью и подразумевает разделение между целями и нецелями в поле внимания. Следовательно, скорее всего, да, это связано все-таки с каким-то процессом объектно-ориентированного внимания. Но, с другой стороны, собственно, Игорь адресовался к вопросу о том, что развлечение признаков может быть и предвнимательным. Почему обязательно должны называть этот процесс вниманием? И тогда у нас возникает два блока: осознание внимания, и мы можем их
предвнимание я не называл. Я не называл здесь предвнимание. Я просто сказал, что совсем не обязательно, чтобы там участвовало внимание.
Да, ну вот здесь вот я бы сказала вопрос скорее там...
Потому что предвнимание тоже определенным образом нагружено.
Методологических предпочтений. Давайте так, да? Потому что в зависимости от методологических предпочтений ты будешь выбирать ту или иную позицию.
На правах одного из модератора я предложу в дальнейшем меньше обсуждать вопросы определений, поскольку, мне кажется, подобные дискуссии только нас заводят в дальнейшие тупики. So I'm just saying that definitional questions are probably...
There's no way to move forward to
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so and continue. But if you consider this question to ask whether we actually modulate attention and whether we can claim that there is no attention in the attended field, I'm not claiming that there is no attention in the attended field. I'm claiming that even in the unattended field, they are distinguishing between targets and non-targets enough to catch this response in the answer, in the verbal answer, I did not notice. That's the case. So, yes, attention is included.
Окей. Есть ли еще какие-то вопросы? Is there any more questions?
Да, скорее всего, пропустил просто. Вот на слайдах ипсилатеральные электроды, внимание налево и электроды слева.
Да.
А контралатеральные, там вы их не брали? Или...
Конечно, брали. На самом деле, там вот, в этой ситуации, как интересно, оказалось, что на ипсилатеральных электродах больше реакции, выраженность реакции. То есть, собственно, значимые реакции вот в этом условии слепоты, да, то есть аналогичном условии слепоты, наблюдается на ипсилатеральных электродах.
А почему так? Мне кажется, это немножко парадоксально, да?
Да. Я боюсь, что... I will translate, but можно я сначала отвечу? Я, честно, не очень знаю. Потому что вообще, в принципе, ситуация с компонентами зрительными, да, состоит в том, что, конечно, мы их находим, естественно, в контралатеральном поле, красиво и замечательно. Да. А здесь получается, что вот такие результаты, они скорее более выражены. Но здесь еще тоже момент, мы могли получить такие результаты из-за нашего референта. У нас был мастоид, возможно, это повлияло, право мастоид, на то, что ипсилатеральные были более выражены. Собственно, но это такой технический момент, который в данной ситуации мог сработать. Просто, да, основной ответ на контралатеральных не был обнаружен значимых отличий. Okay, the question... Yes, sorry. The question was about the differences in intentional blindness condition actually in ipsilateral. And the overall GAN and assent things are contralateral. Why? And I answered that I don't know first. Second, it might be to the reference electrode. So, because we had mastoid, right mastoid, so probably influence on the right side and enhanced kind of signal on the left side. And that's how we found on the left ipsil electrodes, left side ipsilateral electrodes more result.
У нас есть время еще на один вопрос. We have time for one more question. Okay. Then we have 10 minutes for break. У нас 10 минут на перерыв и 5 минут. С первого мы продолжаем.